In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some extra bonus material for the Unreal Nanite ZBrush workflow that I've made video content for. And on this one, I'm going to show you some additional modeling tools inside of Unreal to where we could do some patterns like what we see this floor on here. We'll do a gridded pattern. We're also going to do this arched pattern that you see here, and we're going to be able to take that and we're going to convert that over to blueprints. We're also going to take a look at how we can build some grass and make some wind on the grass and actually get that moving. And to top everything off, we'll do a little bit of rock, adding some rocks within the world. We'll look at how we can use physics to actually drive where these things land and sit on the floor so we don't have to hand place all those. And yeah, so I think when you're done, you should have some nice little techniques to really bring some life to the rest of your environment. So let's go ahead and get started and let's jump into Unreal. So for this part of the extras content, we'll take a look at how we can use Unreal's modeling tools to do a pattern generator. So you can see how I built this pattern that you see here on the floor. First thing we're going to take a look at is the pattern tool that exists within inside of Unreal Engine. To use this, I'm going to start a new, if I go File, New Level, and I'm just going to make a basic level so we can just start off together. And I do think this is one of those situations where using the tool, it would probably be smart to do it in a very clean environment like this, and I'll show you why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of the meshes that I've already built within here. So I'm going to open this up. Go to my sculpt area. I'm just going to grab one of my basic cubes, and I'll put this in the center of the world. I'll just zero out everything. So just like we did with the earlier blueprints, and if we want to have some kind of object that has this as like the pivot point for this, we will need to hold on to this object. So I'm going to take this cube that we have. I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm just going to drag out a copy. And I'll push this one down. My cube is 100 units, so I'm just going to push this down -95 units so it sticks up over the floor. I'll just select this one and I'll just tap H. In order for me to see what's going on a little bit easier, I'm going to go to the materials that I made for this floor. I'm just going to click and drag it out there. That way I don't see that gridded pattern. I do see the grid in the world, and that could be helpful for us, but I'm going to go ahead and select the cube. And then we're going to go under here. We're going to go to the modeling toolkit area. That should be loaded by default. If you don't see that, go to your plugins area and make sure you enable the modeling section tools that they have within there, but it should be loaded for you with this version of Unreal. So I'm going to go to this Xform tab, and then if I go ahead and click on pattern, I'm not exactly sure what you're going to see just right out the gate, but I think it should be something similar to this, where you can see that we've got our piece and it's repeated through this line. So if we take a look at shape, you can see that we can do a line, there's a grid that you can do, and you can also do a circular pattern as well. So let's just take a look at line real quick. There's also this different methods of being able to space things out. So if I drag this down, you can see the extent of this is 1,000 units that I have within there. And then depending on how many you want to put through there, if I put 10, my cubes are 100 Unreal units by 100 Unreal units, so that's like 1 meter. So that's why I'm using this 1,000. I did notice with this method by count, if I put this at 900 like this, I can get these things to actually butt up right next to each other like that. So that's one way of doing it. I'm going to just put this back to 1,000 right here like this. And you can also change the spacing method. So we got this step size, and then this one seems to give me, like with the numbers that I would expect, it can just butt these things up right next to each other like that. If I did the extent of this and I did 1,500, then we can push this out even further like this. And then I'm doing the step size 100, and I believe it's doing each one of these right next to each other because that's 100 units for each one of my blocks that I've got here. So I'll just put this back to 1,000 like this, and then we can do this packed, and that will try to pack these within there, and it tries to keep it centered. So I'll leave it to you to play around with some of those things. Now, depending on like if you're trying to get this exact math, like where it sits, that's going to determine the method that you're going to want to use. I also wanted to show you that it's possible instead of this direction on x-axis, you could do y, or you could do z, and then you could have this stacked on top of there. Now you can see it's also possible with this manipulator that we have here that we can actually drag this thing up, and we can have this, we can do these numbers here where I do 0, and I believe if I do 500, that should make that sit directly on the floor like that. I'm just going to put this back down to negative 95 like we had it before. I'll just go ahead and change it from line to grid. And this is actually what I really wanted to work with right here. So looks pretty good, but looks a little bit too perfect. So what could we do with this? We've got this start rotation, we've got an end rotation. So you could do some interesting things like this, where you start to rotate the parts and the pieces over the duration of this. Let's go ahead and reset that right there. They also have this jitter on here, where you could just add some value within through here, and maybe I make it 7. 7 seems to be pretty good. And then I could do the 7 on this axis as well, and maybe I do 7 here. Maybe this one's a little bit too much. Then maybe I'll do like 5, something like that. And then they also have the start translation, right? So they also have a jitter on there. You can start it and then do an end. So if we push this up here, let's do 100 like this. So you can see how it's pushing it in this direction there. If I put that back down to 0, let's try here, and that's going to push it here. And then this one should push it up like that. So you can do some pretty interesting things with this. I'm going to go back to 0 on there. Really what I'm looking for is something that I could tile over my floor over and over again, something like this, right? So I think those numbers work pretty good for me. And then now if I want to go ahead and accept that, I'll go ahead and click the accept, and we should be good to go. Okay, this is how we can get our patterns built. I want to show you how we can turn that pattern into a blueprint so that we can just duplicate this thing over and over again. We could select it in within here. You can see what's interesting about this is it makes it into this thing and it calls it pattern. And you actually have access to each one of the meshes that are in here. So let's say you wanted to do some fine tuning on this and you wanted this one to be up just a little bit. You could select some other one through here. So you could get pretty granular with this, and you could make something very specific at the end. Looks like you can actually just click on these and select them. So that might make it very easy for you to grab some part that you're not too happy with and fix that up. All right. So just like any other thing, if we have a collection of meshes, we can select that and go to the blueprint area, and we can tell it to turn that into a blueprint. I do want to draw your attention back to what we looked at before, where if we just make this blueprint, we're going to get a really weird pivot point for this. That's not going to make it like super easy for us to drag and snap into the grid. So in order to combat against that, we need a cube, or we need some type of object. It doesn't matter if it's a cube or not, but it needs to be in the world, and it needs to be zeroed out like this. Give the scale 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the pattern first, hold down shift, and I'll select that cube second. You can see in here, I've made a folder called blueprints, and I actually have a folder that I called patterns. So if I want to start saving my patterns, I can just put that within through there. All right. So we're going to come up to the blueprints area. We're going to say convert selection to blueprint class, do that. We're going to tell it to harvest the components. Then we need to tell it where do we want to store it, and that's why I made this folder for this, so I can put this in here. And I'll just call this grid pattern, and I'll do underscore 01 like that. Okay, and I'll go ahead and select it. So it makes the blueprint for us. We're not out of the woods yet. Okay, so we've got this piece that needs to become our 000 location. You can see it's got some data on here where it's got, something on the translation and everything. So we're going to make this cube the new root to everything. So this is pretty nice. We can just take this pattern thing, close it up, and we can just click and drag this onto the cube just like that. And then this now becomes the pivot for everything. We can go ahead and zero this out. Right here, I'm going to put even zeros there just to make sure everything's good. like that. And if I don't want that cube anymore, we can take this pattern and then we can drag it now onto the shared root and we can say attach, and then we can select the cube and then we can get rid of it. We don't need it anymore. And if we do have one cube where this thing started off, that it started to build the pattern. If we take this and then scroll down, hold down shift, we can select everything, and I'm just going to scroll back up and I'll click and drag this and put this on the root just like that. And then now we've got every single one of these as a different object, and it's just parented to this shared root, which you don't see anything other than scale. So that just means everything's zeroed out for the translation and the rotation. Okay. Go ahead and compile that and I'll save it. And then it looks like this is messed up in the world, right? But that's pretty simple. It's going to keep those translations that we had on there. So we just need to go and zero everything out. And then now we've got a pattern that we can use and duplicate it all over the place. So I'm just going to hide this real quick. So now we got this blueprint. We can select it. We can hold down Alt and we can drag out copies of this. So you're able to put this exactly where you want this thing to be. I do have grid snapping turned off. So let me just get rid of that real quick. And I'll hold down Alt and then drag out another copy just like that. And let me push this right, I think right about there, right? So the other thing that I would probably do is take a look at this pattern next to this one here. See how it looks. You might end up finding certain objects don't look that great to you. Now I can move these individually, but this is going to move it for the just this instance of the blueprint. If I want this to be a universal change that's going on, I need to double click on the blueprint. I need to open it up, go to the viewport, and then I need to find where I'm at. So let's select this corner and move this. So there's that. Let's see if I move this corner. There's that. Let's see where this piece sits here. So I'm just trying to find somewhere in this row right there. And then I can orient myself and figure out exactly where I'm at. So let's select this cube again, and now we should be going down the line. Okay, so the only thing I was seeing is maybe this piece that was right about here. I might want to push this over or something like that. And again, you can kind of go to town on this now that you got the pattern set up and really fix this thing up, compile and save it. And again, we can drag out copies that way, or we can just click and we can drag out from the blueprint like that, and you can move it around at that point. Okay, so there is how to do a gridded pattern. Let's go ahead and take a look at a circular pattern that can be something that we put over the top of the door. So in this section of the extras content, we'll take a look at how we can use the pattern generator and do a circular pattern, and we can add it to a blueprint like what we see above this door right here. Okay, the next thing I wanted to show you is how we can do a circular pattern. So we can build something like this over our archway that we have. I'll go ahead and select this real quick and just get rid of it. I'll show you what I did with one of my cubes. I just drug it in here, zeroed this out like this. Then I'm dragging it up, and you can see what I've already taken the scale of this. I took this, put it up negative 40, that's just pushing it right in the front right here, so that could actually come out further if you wanted. So let's just do negative 45 like that. And you can see I did a non-uniform scale on this, so it's still pretty thick going through the back right there, so it's the same thickness for the width and the depth, but the height, I made that twice as high as everything else. That seemed to be visually pretty good looking to me. So that was the basis of what I know that I want to tile this thing going across and around through here. So select this. We'll go back to the modeling toolkit that they've got, this X form, and go ahead and click on pattern. And right now it's got all the values that I've already set on here. So let me just reset this. And instead of line, we're doing a circular pattern just like this. I actually still have to reset these. Okay. Just like that. Just so we can see what you're probably looking at. This also has a, a translation that is put on through here. Let's go ahead and choose the plane, this YZ plane, and then that's going to be giving me the area where I need to be on there. I need the pivot to be right here in the center of this. So I know if I drag this thing down, I should be able to go 300 units down just because I was using like very easy math to go ahead and snap everything up, things like that, right? And then we've got this spacing mode we can do by count again. If we take a look at that, you could, do something like this where if I did like 36, then I can get a nice number. It looks like that. 42. So we can just keep dragging up until we get something that's pretty close to where we want that to be. I'll do like 48. Now, if this is working like right here at this size for this, but that's not really great for where I want to put this within through there. So what I've got is this radius number right here, and then that's actually pulling this thing in. So if we get a radius that is about where we want that to be, you can see that count number is just way too high for us. So we could drag that out, and it looks like if we got 12, that looks pretty good spacing wise, but except for that radius, I want that to be like right over the lip, right there like that. So maybe the value for me is like 90. So again, I think you just try to eyeball it, get it in as close as you can. Then I usually try to use some whole numbers that are within through there. So now I'm going to try to double this up and see if this works. So if I'll do 24, and that works pretty well. My parts and pieces are still touching each other just a little bit. So we could either cancel this, come back into it. So like we could say that's a little bit too big for us, right? We could come back into the numbers. I've got this on a proportional thing, and let's do like 0.225, and you can see it's going to do that. One thing that is kind of nice about this pattern thing is now we can go back into the pattern, and it does recognize and remember the numbers that we have on here. I might have to drag this thing back down and do this at 300 again. But that's one way that we can get the circular pattern going, right? I did push this a little bit where I found if I did this packed version and then we could do a start angle right here, and I think I had this at 270, and then I needed this to be the end angle. Let's see, it was like 180. Let's see, right there like that. And that's only giving me half of this. So if I did something like this, I know I needed to start right around there, and I think the number for that was 270. And then if we drag this up and get this within through there, it looked like that was going to give me a number that's pretty good for this, right? So I've let you play around with that. I'm not a math whiz, so I think if you could figure out things mathematically, if you want this to be perfect, you could sit there and you could do that, right? I'm going to go ahead and hit accept. And again, if we don't want things to be just perfect, we could select some of these pieces within through there, select it over here first, and then you could start to manipulate that. Now, I'm going to turn off the grid snapping, and that will let me just push out pretty granular. If I go here, right now it's on moving in world space, so it's going to be very straight up, down, left, right. If we go here to object space, then we can push this thing in and out, and then that way we can do some little bit of irregularity to that, just build a little bit of personality to this, make it feel like it's been lived in the world just a little bit longer. We can also, don't forget that we can rotate these things as well. The rotation, that's interesting that it doesn't really rotate exactly the way that I would hope for on there. Now, if we do world rotation, yeah, it's just not giving me the options I'd want. So that's going to be a little bit trickier to try to rotate these things. So I do believe the reason why it was rotating very weird like that, when you make the pattern, it does tell you that the source object that I had has non-uniform scale on there. So I think it's trying to rotate it and take into account this scale that's going on. So if you ever found like, hey, I really want to make sure I can move these bricks around and rotate them, you'd probably do something like what we did, but then you need to probably save or like break out those translations that are on there. And I do believe I haven't done it yet, but there is this bake transformed on here, so I think you could actually bake the transform into the object and make a brand new object with that. I just haven't tried it out yet, but I do think that's why it's giving us that weird scale issue that we saw. So the next part is I want to show you what if we want to harvest this as a blueprint, just like we did before. There's nothing new about that. And we could drag these out as copies, but what if we want to put this blueprint together with this blueprint, right? So first thing I'm going to do, drag out our cube, and then I'm just going to zero out everything so we've got ourselves something that we could use as the pivot point. We'll select our pattern, and then we will select the cube that sits there right there like that. And then I'm going to go back to my folder that I got under blueprints and patterns, and then I'm going to go here, and then we're going to say convert selection to blueprint class. We'll do what we did before. We'll harvest this. We've got it in patterns, and then I'll call this door arch 01 like this. I'll just put a P at the end of it for pattern. I'll go ahead and do that, and then that should give us the same scenario we had before. So if we follow the pattern we did earlier, we're going to take all of our meshes, just close them up here, click and drag it onto the cube, and that becomes the new parent for us. And then we can just zero this thing out like that. And then now we can take this, drag it onto the shared root, we'll attach it, and we can get rid of the cube. And now everything should be zeroed out for us, right? Now, you're going to see it. Obviously, it's going to shift in the world just like we had happened to us before. If I go and say 0, 0, 0 on there, we can zero everything out and everything should snap up. So cool there, right? But let's see. If we want to actually make it part of this blueprint, I'm going to hit Control B just to open this up. And I'm going to double click it so we can open it and view it in here. I'm going to go to the viewport right here like this, just rotate it around like that. So we've got our, we've got everything here for this blueprint. I'm not really going to mess with anything on this one. Let's push this over here so we know this is kind of first, and we want to get this over here. So let's go back over here. Let's select all the meshes, and I'll copy them. Right click, say copy, come over here, and just say paste. Like that, and then we should have this as a this first piece that's on here. So everything's gonna go ahead and line up for us. And if we want to go ahead and keep that, we can go ahead and say compile, and then we would save for that. All right. So that's how we can get the meshes from the pattern, change it into a blueprint, and if we want to add it to an existing blueprint, that's how we can get it on over to the other one. All right. Okay, the next part I want you to take a look at is if we want to make grass inside of our level and we want to have a little bit of wind blowing that grass over time. All right, so let's take a look at this and let's hop into Maya. Okay, here we are inside of Maya, and you can see what I just built was some very simple blades of grass that we have here. I'll show you how I've created that. The other thing I want to bring to your attention, if I open up the UV editor window, is that I put UVs on this. I'm going to show you two different methods of being able to mask the bottom of this. When the wind blows, it's going to blow the entire blade of grass. We don't want that. We don't want this to be moving down here at the bottom. So I used UVs to do this, and we can use a texture node with inside of Unreal. I can show you that, so it doesn't really cost us anything as far as textures, and we can use a gradient on there. I'll show you that, but then I'll also show you how we could use vertex colors, and if you wanted to go that direction with things, we could do that as well. All right, so in order to build this, I did want some thickness to this, so if I just make a cylinder, and I'm just going to rotate this, so just tap E, I'm going to hold down J, and then just snap this to 90 degrees. I'm just going to set this off to the side for right now, just like this. I'll push this over just 150 units right now. And then we could take this, and depending on the radius, we could pull the radius much further down, so we can middle mouse drag that. And then the subdivisions on the axis, if we do something like 3, we can do something like this, where we are starting to build what would be this blade, right? I can pull the radius in even further. Depending on the thickest part of this, I'll just go somewhere right there like that. And then now, I think the height of this feels pretty good. Let's see what the height is set to 1. So if I drag this up here about 50 units, I can do something like that. And I think it should sit on the floor. Let's turn the grid on just so we can see what's going on here. All right, and then if I select this, if I want to go through here and say subdivisions on the height, because I'm going to bend this thing, let's just give it like 9 divisions on here, and then that should give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 through there. Let's do 10. I wasn't sure if that was going to give us this even number that we want right there. So let's do something like that, okay? So if we want, we can delete the history. Alt-Shift-D will delete the history on that. It's already got this cap on there. I could just take this, I could just raise this up. So this is up to you now, where like how much of this do you want to model? I could select these verts right here like this. I could right click, say vertex to grab those, and I could just tap R, and I could start to scale this in, move this around. What I would probably like to do is make it feel a little bit more organic. So if I select some of these verts within here, you can tap B, and that will turn on the soft mod tool, and you can hold down B and then click and drag. And then at that point, you can just move this thing around and kind of deform it a little bit like that. Now, if your values for holding down B and then left clicking and dragging are just not working for you, double click on the move settings over here. And what we're looking at is this soft selection. This fall off radius is what you'd want to do. So you would just kind of pull this thing down and get it a little bit smaller for yourself. So again, with B, I can click and drag, and you can see we're interactively changing that number. But sometimes that number is just like way too big for you to see what's going on. So that should get you something within here. This also works with scale as well. So if I were to do this, I want to scale like along this way here. So I could tap D to change the pivot and just kind of do it like that. Tap D, and then I could just fatten that up a little bit. Then I want to take this down here below, and I want to make that a little bit smaller. I'll tap D to rotate the pivot again. Tap D again, and then just scale that in just a little bit like that. Okay, so I think that's looking pretty decent. I'll tap B to get off the soft mod thing. And if I just click on this middle box, I can move it around in screen space. That might not be great because I don't want it to go down below the floor. If I rotate here, you see these different planes that we have. We can click and drag those so we can move it around on 2 axes all at one time. So I'll just drag this in just a little bit. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a split going down the center of this. So if you're in object mode, you can tap F8 to cycle back and forth between object and component mode. If you do shift right click, we should be able to get to this multi-cut tool right here like that. That's one way of getting into it. You can also come up here to the modeling toolkit, and then you can go to multi-cut right there like that. Now this one, if you hold down control, it'll let you snap and then click and drag, and I could add a new section through there. If I'm holding on control and I middle mouse click, it will snap directly in the center of that. And I could just leave the bottom of that. I'll just take this new line that I've got, select this, hold down shift, select here, tap W for the move tool, and then I will just move this back just a little bit like that. Okay. And then I'm going to take the multi-cut tool again and just go from here to here, hit enter, and then I at least have something that I think is going to start working for the model. I'll let you finesse this and try to get this to look, get it in a better shape than what I got going on here. That should get you what you need. Now, as far as the shading goes, this does not look good on the shading. So I'm going to select the object, and we're going to go to Mesh Display, And we could do this where if we soften all of our edges, that's one way of doing things. If we go to mesh display, we can harden our edges, and that will make every single edge hard edge. I'm going to make this thing soft edge again. And I believe that you should be controlling this as an artist. You should say there should only be hard edges where you want them to be hard. Everything else should be soft. So I'm going to go hit F10, or you can right click on here and say edge. Double click along this right here like that. And if I need to add more, I can hold down shift and I can add some more to this. I'll select this bottom part here like that. I want to have this be a nice hard edge down through here too. So I'll hold down shift, double click on that. And then now I'll go back up to this mesh display and I'll say harden edges on that. The other thing you can do while you're in this mode, while you have edges selected, you can hold on shift and right click and it'll give you access to this rotational menu where you could do some of this too. If you wanted to select the entire object and try to do it by an object and look at the normals of the object, you could go to the soften harden right there and do the option box. And then if we are in, like I said, if we're in object mode, if I did something like 10, we could do that. It might pick up some harder edges that we're not really wanting to do. So I think the default is somewhere around 30. So let's just say, let's just do 30. And that'll still give me everything that I pretty much need on there. So that looks pretty good. If I go to the channel box, I don't really want history on this model. So I'm going to hit Alt-Shift-D and I'll delete the history. Or I can go to Edit, delete by type, and that's where you delete your history right there. Okay, so that would give us one of these. I would be working with this thing actually right in the center of the world. We could do that. If we put it right here, we can go modify, freeze transformations. Let's just do modify reset transformations as well. And if I do that, it should put the pivot point right down at the bottom of this thing for us. Okay. I like to use isolate select at times where I only want to see just this fern piece here. So I can hit Control 1 and that will just isolate just that one thing. If I want to bring everything back, Control 1 again. If that's not working for you, you can go to show isolate select and say view selected. That's another way that you can get to this right there. Okay. The next thing I'm going to show you is us doing a bend modifier. Before I do that though, I want to just steal the name of this grass blade and I'll do version 2 just so I got something every time we duplicate this, then we'll just add that number on the end of it. That'll make our life a little bit easier. So with the bend modifier, we can get to things with the modeling area right here, this drop down, and there is a deform tab. So if we do deform and we do nonlinear deformer and we do a bend, let's do the option box and just see what we got going on for this. Let's just go ahead and hit apply for what it says right there on there. And it should take and look at the top of the object, the bottom of the object. We might have to fix this up a little bit. But if you look over here in the channel box, you got this curvature. So we can do this curvature like this, which this seems pretty cool. It's bending from here, right, in the center. Let's give it a little bit of curvature, just like this. And then now we can play around with this high bound and low bound. So if I select that and then do the middle mouse drag, I can get this to be closer to the bottom here like this. Actually, what I want to do is have this low bound set to 0 and I want the high bound to be like this. So we're basically controlling, it can only bend from like the center point out. So if we do that, we can get a nice bend and I can take this bend handle and move it down and I can move it right down on the ground right there like that. Okay. So that will give us the bend that I'm looking for. We can also take this handle and we could select it and we could rotate this thing around like this. Let me turn on wireframe on shaded just so we can see what's going on with the mesh a little bit better. So you got a little bit of options now that I could just click and drag this. I can move it around like that. If we took the object and we go to rotate the object, it's still going to try to bend this thing for us. You can see how it's grabbing the very bottom of that. If we take that bend handle and then we move it up just a little bit, should leave things alone, but we might need to have this go down below the grid just a little bit. I think that would probably be smarter for us to do that. So I'm just going to take the verts, move them down just a little bit. And then again, if I take this and kind of rotate it around, I can get a little bit of a different look for it. And I can also take the curvature and we can go to this bend and I select it, middle mouse drag it. So we could really bend this thing quite a bit. So what I was doing with things is I was taking my object, I was bending it, and if I duplicate it, I hit Control D, or you can go up to Edit, Duplicate, Object. You're duplicating it, and then we still have this thing that's live with this curve, and we can kind of move this thing around a little bit. We could also take this grass blade, and we could rotate this thing like this, and we can hit Control D, and you can see we've added another copy to this. We're keeping the history on this very first one that we built. And as long as we keep the history on that, we can keep doing things to this with the bend modifier and then kind of rotating it around. We could even take this thing, we could scale it down a little bit like this. And when we like the changes, we just hit Control D and we're making a new duplicate version of that thing, right? Just like that. So that's what I did to build these things out. One thing I should have done at the very beginning before we got going on this was actually build UVs for this. So I'm just gonna say, hey, I'm happy with this. I'm gonna delete the history. We're gonna get rid of the bend modifier. I don't want the scale issues that are on here. So I'm gonna take all these that we just built. I'm gonna go modify, freeze transformations, and everything should be right there with a pivot point for us. We should be good to go on that. And it is possible, again, if you wanted to take one of these and just duplicate it, move it around, scale it after we've already bent this thing, you could do that. So we got a new version here. The other thing we can do is if we hit F9, let's just grab a cluster right there, tap B to turn on our soft mod, and we could do some stuff like this where we're grabbing this and we're just kind of deforming it and changing the look of it just a little bit, right? So we got a good cluster of things. Now I'm going to take this, I'm just going to go to UV. I'm going to go to the UV editor, and because this started off as a cylinder, we've got some funky UVs going on for that. That's going to be real easy to fix. The only thing that I care about is building a gradient that goes from the floor to the top. So what I'm going to do is go to UV, I'm going to go to planar, and I'm going to do this option box, and I'm going to tell it to do a planar mapping. If I did it from camera, you could probably see kind of what's going on. Our viewport becomes like a camera projection onto this thing, and you see how it's just kind of capturing it like that. I'm going to take this and do a capture through the Z axis like this. And if we hit apply, you can see it's pushing this way. If we did the Y axis, it's going to be looking at it as if it's going straight down. I'm going to hit apply on there too. And then I also like to keep this image width and height ratio, and that keeps everything nice and square within there. And it should put it in the 0 to 1 range for you. If it doesn't, you might just take the UVs and you can just scale this stuff down just a little bit. You might have to right click, say UVs, and select that to be able to move things around. I still have the soft select on. I'll just tap B for that to get rid of that. So we did this to 1. If you did this at the very beginning, let's see here, we've got this. If we duplicated it, everyone that we duplicated, they would have these same UVs. So what can we do in this case where I want to get this UV? Let's push this off to the side right here. And we got different scale and everything else like that. We could actually transfer the attributes of this model that's got the UVs that we want onto these other ones. So let's select this, hold down Shift, select the next model that we want to transfer to, and then we go to Mesh, and then we go to Transfer Attributes, and let's do the option box for that. So what we want to do is we want to transfer UV sets. We'll do the current, and we could sample, if they were sitting directly on top of each other like the same mesh, but didn't have the same UVs, you could do a sample space and world. But in our case, we want to do component. Let's try that and hit apply. Because they're the same models, they just have different UVs. So that worked. I'm going to go from here, go to the next one, hit apply, go here, the next one, hit apply. I don't believe we can do them all at one time like this. I'm going to hit undo real quick just so we can get back. And if I did this and then select them all, let's see if I can do them all at one time. Nope. So that's why we got to go one at a time like that. And you should be able to see the UVs jump into the new position for you, just like that. And hit apply. And we're good to go. Now, if I was you, I'd just take this, delete the history, Alt-Shift-D will delete the history on there, and then just select everything, right, like what we got here. Control-G, that'll group it, and now we can just call this our grass blades, whatever you want to call them, right there like that. And then we could export this whole entire cluster out as one FBX. So Unreal will allow you to import all these like as one FBX. We can tell it to combine them together as one, or we can tell them, hey, we want to keep these separate. And I think what we'll end up doing is keeping them separate. But for now, just take this group, say File, Export Selection, do the option box, and do FBX. And if I export selection, I'm just gonna throw this just on the desktop, just so I can get this out of here and show you these options like this. And you can see the things I want to turn on is smoothing groups, tangents and binormals, and the smooth mesh. And if you got that, you should have everything you need. Go ahead and just export that thing out. And then we can hop on over to Unreal and take a look at some of the options in Unreal. Okay, back in Unreal, let's go ahead and get our meshes in. So I'm just going to go to my meshes folder. I've got an environment dressings folder that I made. I'm just going to right click within there and I'm going to say import to current folder. And then I'm going to go find the grass blades that I exported out from Maya. Go ahead and hit open. And then I'm going to go to the static mesh area. I'm going to click on static mesh. We do not need materials and we do not need textures. Let's go back in static mesh and make sure that we go and open up the build area. And we're going to tell it we do not want to recompute normals. We do not want to recompute tangents. And we'll scroll down just a little bit further here. I don't want to combine the meshes together because if we do, that's going to make it into one big cluster. I want to use each individual grass blade that we have here. And if we go down just a little bit further, I'm turning Nanite off for this. I don't want Nanite on for that. So I'll go ahead and hit import. And you can see it's going to import it in for us. All right, you can do this part now. If you have a material you have made, you could go assign it at this point. I've already got a material, so I'm going to assign it now. But if you need to make the material later, I'm going to show you how we make the material. And you're going to have to come back and do this part. But if I'm going to double click on this, I'm going to open up each one of these right here. And I've got two more. And then I'm going to go find the material that I've made already. And I just call this basic grass. And I've got a material instance of that. So I'll assign it to each one of these right here like that. Okay. And I've got one more. And I'll go ahead and save each one of these. So I can close this down. If I go to the meshes after I've done this part, I can just go select this, hold down shift, select this one, right click, and I can say save, and it'll save each one of those. All right. So I was working with blueprints on this. I found it more beneficial for me to make blueprints and then assign each one of the grass blades to the blueprints that I was making. And then that was able to give me some variation. So if I go to my blueprints area and I take a look at these grass blades, you can see I've got like a thinner one and one that's a little bit thicker, and I got the thickest one here. So I got three variations of that right there like that. It's pretty easy to make the blueprint just like we've been doing before. I'll right click on here and we'll say blueprint class. We'll say actor and we'll call this BP grass demo like that. Double click that, open it up, and we should just see the blueprint window like this. I'm going to go back to my meshes and find my grass blades. Let me move this up so we can see what's going on here. And here's my version 2. So I got 5 blades of grass, so I can just drag that in right there like that. And now this is up to you what you do with each one of these blueprints that you're going to be creating. I would take the grass blades, take a look at them, try to make them have the feeling you're going for, right? To duplicate in here, you have to hit Control D, and then we can take a copy. That's a little bit different. I do wish we could just hold down Alt and drag out copies of stuff, but that does not work in this mode for things. I'm just going to take this one, hit Control D. I'm going to move this over here, rotate it, and I'll scale this one down like this, and then rotate it out this way, like this, just a little bit. Okay, and I might need to move it down under the grid just a little bit more, like that. Still feels pretty tall to me, so I'm just gonna do something like that. Go ahead and hit compile and then save. So then that would be one of the first versions that I would be making, like this. It'd probably be smart to put at the end of it like an underscore 01. That way, now if I drag this thing out into the world and take a look at it, I've got one variation. I definitely would take a look at that, how it's looking in the world. Make sure you fix that one up first. And then after that, then you probably would just want to right click and say duplicate. And then you got a number 2. Since we put an underscore 01, it just made a brand new version and put the number in correctly for us. And we can double click on that, go to the viewport. And on this one, maybe we're doing something that looks quite a bit different, right? So just trying to build some variance in this. I'll scale that one down just a little bit like that. So I think that looks pretty cool. We could scale these in this way too and rotate them to try to make them not look maybe quite as fat for the leaves. Like that. Okay, I'll go and compile and save that. Close it down. I'll just drag this out, and then again, I got a whole new version that I can start to play around with, right? So that's how I built the system for it. Let's take a look at the material on there now and see what's going on with the material. So I'll select one of these, just select one of the grass blades, and then double click on the material instance so you can see what we got as far as values on here. So this material, if I go to the parent material, I'm going to double click here and go to the parent material. We've already looked at everything about how to make the basic materials, so nothing's new in there. I even showed you how we could use a vertex color if we wanted, and we could have lerp values, and we could plug that into there. So we've already looked at that. We've looked at the emissive, and then the only part that we haven't really touched on right now is this world position offset. And this is the component that will actually change the vertices and animate the vertices. And what we're using is just a simple grass wind node. That's pretty easy to find. Just type in grass, and you should be able to find the simple grass wind node. This was very easy to fill in because, we can just right click and say promote to parameter, and that will give us the names for each one of those. Let me get rid of that real quick. So that gives you these values that I got. I think they're pretty decent to start off, and you'll have to play around with this a little bit when you get the material instance. But we've got this intensity for the wind, we got this weight, and then we got this speed. So the intensity will really deform the thing quite a bit, and then the speed, you could have the same animation, but you're playing it just very, very slow. So it's like slowing down time in a way. And then you get this wind weight, which we could, in theory, plug in the vertex mask directly in the weight, or we could do this texture coordinate thing that I'm going to show you, and that could get plugged in there as well. I just put a value of 1 to make it 100%, and I'll show you what I was doing with the mask to kind of control that a little bit more. So maybe it's a little bit redundant to have this value in here, but I just left it in there anyways. This additional world position offset needs 3 values for that. Again, you can right click on there, promote to parameter, or you can tap 3 and just get this node and then plug that directly in there like that. So that's up to you. So from what I understand, even though this looks like a color node, it's got 3 different values of red, green, and blue, and those equals out to X, Y, and Z. And if it's black, it's not going to do anything. If you start adding values to that, it's going to offset the mesh. So it's going to push the mesh in either the X, Y, or Z direction. So that's what that is for there. Then I'm using this lerp node that you see here. So just hold on L and click, and you can get a lerp node, or you can start to type in linear interpolation. And then this one's really nice. It's like Photoshop, where you got 2 different layers, where you got an A that sits over the top of B, and then we've got alpha on there that drives how all these things blend together. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and I will put this on a flat plane. And I'll show you what's going on with this right now. So this texture coordinate node, normally you plug this into the UV area of a texture node. I don't have any textures within here, but if I do texture sample, you see there's a UV coordinate that you could plug this texture coordinate into. If I right click and say text coord like this, I can get a texture coordinate. Normally you're plugging that in and you can tell it what UV index. So if you've got multiple UVs, you're telling it use UV index 0, which is default, or 1, 2, 3. So it's up to you how many you have in there. So there's that. But if you open this thing up, you can see that there's a U tile and a V tile, and you can tell it how many times it tiles in this direction or vertical, right? If we do this, I'm going to get rid of this texture sample. If I right click on this and say start previewing node, you can see it's got these funky colors on there. And that actually equals out to a gradient that's going horizontal and vertical. You can see the next thing I got in this line right here is a component mask. So if we click out, do component, and do a component mask, you can see a component mask will let you mask out. You can have red, green, blue, and alpha. And you can mask out in and out whatever you want on there. And this, at this point, I just want to look at the red channel. I'm going to go right click on this and say start previewing node and take a look. If we have this masked with the red channel, then it's a gradient going horizontal. If we mask with green, then we've got a vertical mask going from top to bottom. So this is problematic. We've got the mask, but we want the bottom of this thing to have no wind. So we want that to be black in the mask. White is like 100% value and black is 0. So we don't want it to move here. We want it to move up here. So Unreal's got a nice node within here that will flip values for you. It's called a 1 minus. And you just type in 1, find that, find a 1 minus. And now if I right click on here and say start previewing node, you can see what we've got. We've got this, we got the value, and now it's inverted for us. So that would be enough, and we could plug this into the alpha here. You can see what I've done is this. We've got an A slot and a B slot, and if I start previewing this node within through here, this is a little bit crazy. This is actually what's going on value-wise with the wind on here. If I put this to 0, it goes black because I've got this right here, a red, green, blue thing that is plugged into slot A, so it's pure black. So if this value of black, which would be 0, is plugged in the world position offset, it's not going to move at all. There would be no movement whatsoever. Now I'm putting this over the top of this wind node. Okay. So right now, because I have a value of 0 on the alpha, I'm killing all this. This is getting overwritten by that. It might make more sense to have it sit there, but there's just not tons of room, so we could do that. Either way. Now if I put the value up to like 0.25, you can see we're getting a mixture of this. So this is starting to fade this over the top of it. I do 0.5. And again, it's not going to look probably the way you expect because we're driving values within through there. And so it's kind of a cool looking funky pattern. You know, I've never really thought about using that, and that could be something that you could put on your model to do some weird effect or something like that. But hopefully you see with this slot A and B and this alpha how we're able to start to blend these two together, right? And so if I just plugged this directly in here like that, you can see it's masked at the bottom. It's pure black, so there would be no movement down here at the bottom. It's just very shallow. So what if I wanted a way to push this gradient up through here? Well, what we're doing with this, we're using this power node. So if you right click and you say power, you can find the power node. That's very easy. And I'm just plugging this in here at the base. And if I had a value of 1 for the power node, you can see it would give us basically what we had before we started adding the power node. If you put it lower, like 0.25, that's going to make it even more shallow. So it's reducing that gradient. But if we start to overdrive it like 2 or 3 or 5, you can see how that gradient starts to grow up that right there like that. Okay, so I'll just do something like 3. And then if I wanted to do something where I could kill the entire thing, I'm doing a multiply node. and I'm multiplying it by this grass mask amount that I called it. So again, you can call these names whatever makes sense to you. That's up to you. I'll just drag this thing out like this. And right now, if you multiply something by a value of 1, you get exactly what you got before. But multiply darkens things. If I wanted to start to kill this overall effect of the entire wind, I could just put this value at 0 and it would kill everything, right? So I probably have this a little bit overkill because I've got the ability to mask within here. We've got the ability to kind of mask here. So I don't know. It's up to you what you want to build for that. But this should give you everything you need to get this thing working on there. So I'll just right click, say stop previewing node, and you can see it's got a little bit of the motion on there for that. Okay. So that's using a texture coordinate system. Now, it's also possible that we could use instead of a texture coordinate, we could be using a vertex color for, like, let's just say we used a red channel within through here, like that. We could plug this into, depending on if you need to flip it or not, you could use the 1-, but we could flip push that right in there like that. Let me push this back real quick right here. And then let me just show you inside of Maya what this looks like when we are inside the program doing some of that work. So here we are inside of Maya, and we've got our model. We'll go ahead and select it. And if we want to see vertex colors on here, we'll have to go to Display, Polygons, and then go to Custom Polygon Display. Let's do the option box on there. And then let's just do for all. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can see color and shaded display. And if we hit apply for this, we can see what we got going on here. But now we need to apply some vertex color to this. So we're going to go to mesh display, and then we're going to go to apply color and do this option box that you see here. This will allow us to, we can either replace the color, and I'm just going to just make this thing pure black, just like that. And we're getting a little bit of shading on there just from the specularity. That's not a big deal, but we could hit F9 right there like that, and I could select these. And then now if I put this and I put this to red and apply color, you can see what we're going to get for that right there like that. So that's how we can use that tool to add some vertex color. But really what I need is a gradient, so I probably need a painting tool. So if we go to mesh display, they do have this paint vertex color tool. And on there, if I started painting, I'm going to do a color value of, let's just put this on red right here like this. We'll do replace, and I can take the opacity and I can pull the opacity down. Now I do have a Wacom tablet, so that's going to allow me to paint like this a little bit. I'm going to hold down B and to make the brush size smaller like this. So hold down B, click and drag left and right. And then now I'm going to just start to add a little bit more gradient to this right back and through here like that. So again, this would probably be, if you're going to use this method, it would be smart to do this first before you started doing the, duplicating these objects. That way they all have them on them. But just like the UVs, if we get into that position, what we can do is we can transfer this to this. So we'll just go, we're going to go to mesh, transfer attributes, do the option box for this. And then this time we're going to use a color set. And because we have the same mesh, we can just transfer in component space like that. So we got to go this to this, just like we did with the UVs. Okay, just like that. And we got one more. Oops. Let me just tap G for last. And there we go. Now we've got everything pushed on there to where we can get the vertex color information out. We could select this again. Let's just do this top thing here. Say file export selection. We'll do an FBX again. I'm just going to throw it on the desktop real quick. And then I don't believe we need to do really anything different with this. This should get the vertex color information. It should export it out with this. So I'll say export selection. And I'll say I'm going to replace that. And then we need to hop on over to Unreal again. So in Unreal, we're going to go to our meshes area. We're going to right click and import over the top of the same area that we had before. And what we're going to do, I believe we should be able to just select our meshes and right click and say re-import. We could do that, but I'm not sure if it's going to have the vertex color information on there for us. So I do want to make sure that that's going on. I'm going to double click and check this real quick for one of these objects. So to check the vertex color in here, we just double click on that, open up the static mesh viewer, and you go to this eye icon and you can click and say vertex colors, and you can see we actually have the vertex colors on there. I just have a suspicion that this is going to trip somebody up and they're not going to get the vertex color thing in. I do want to show you the import options for that just to make sure you know. So I'm going to select the grass again. I'm going to go back to the static mesh thing, go to static mesh here. We don't have materials, we don't have textures. And I want to go to this area right down below and make sure that this vertex color import option is set to replace. Okay. I believe that is on by default, but if you're having problems, go ahead and make sure that that's on for you. And that should give you everything that you need at that point. Okay. I'm going to go back to the material and I'm going to go back to the parent material. And we just filled that with red for the vertex color on there. I could actually do this where we've got the mesh. So I'm going to go find my mesh, just one of them, doesn't matter. And I'm going to plug it into this little brick icon so I can actually see what's going on with this thing. Okay. So here's that blade of grass. It's moving around. Everything's working okay. And then now I'm going to take the vertex color, the red mask, and I'm going to plug it right here and then override what we had before. So you can see it is working. The values are different and it's a bit harsh right now. You can see I painted with pure black down there and it's pretty black until it gets up and through there. So this is where you would need to go back to Maya. You would need to finesse things and do it that way. So it's really up to you which way you want to go. I'm just going to say I think maybe the vertex color information might be a little bit cheaper than having multiple UV sets, but you know, I don't think either way is going to be really a bad option for you. I just wanted to show you that it's possible to do that, that you could use vertex color information or you could use UVs for that. But either way, it should give you the options that you're looking for and should get you going to where you can start making some grass in your level. Okay, the last thing that we're going to take a look at is how can we use physics to take things like these rocks and place them in the world and let physics do some of the work for where these things land and where they sit. All right, so I'm just going to show you this rock that we have here. I want to hop on over to Maya real quick and show you the model that was made for this. So there's nothing special about the model. I just have enough geometry in the model itself to make sure that the shape is descriptive enough for me. So it's really up to you what the shape of that thing is. Again, I just took a cube, and if we take a cube, you tap 3 to do smooth mesh preview, go to modify, and then I will use convert smooth mesh preview to polygons. That will give me an actual mesh that I can start playing around with. Maybe I scale it. Let me just push this off to the side just a little bit like that. We've already looked at how we could use the soft mod tool, like if we tap B and hold down B and click and drag, we can take different parts of the mesh and we can move it around. We can scale that so we can try to get that maybe a little bit more flat. Maybe I'm just dragging some part of this here and then we move this over to the side, something like that, and through there. So again, it's up to you how you build this shape. That's not super important. I do think it's important though that you get this thing into the center of the world. You understand exactly where the pivot point's going to be for that, and then export that as an FBX. Okay, so let's go back to Unreal. Let's take a look at this rock that we've got here. I'll double click on it, and you can see the static mesh viewer window that we've got. Okay, and what I want to talk to you about is we need collision on this model. So most models, they will have collision automatically generated for it whenever you, import it in. But in order to see the collision, let's go over here and we can see this is the simple collision. So this is going to be generated for you at import time. You can select it. You can actually delete it. If you want to come up here to collision, you could add a sphere simplified collision. So this is just something like this. Like you're not going to be able to squish the sphere. So if you had something that's more of a spherical object, that would be good for you to use. You can also do a capsule shape, and on the capsule shape, you would actually be able to do something like a longer mesh like this. So I could rotate this. Now, this is not going to match up, obviously, because the shape is quite a bit different. It will give us the collision. They also have on here a box simplified collision that you could put on here, and you can rotate that around like this and try to fit it. Beyond that, we can do collision. We can do this auto convex collision. If you do that, you see that we've got these options down here in the lower right-hand corner. And let's just leave it at the default and hit apply and see what it generates for us. And you can see it's actually generated the mesh. I didn't notice that it went that quick. And it's pretty close to this. So if we go back in through here, and I'm going to just turn on complex collision as well, just to see. So it did a pretty good job fitting to the model there like that. So it's possible that we could do that. There's the other thing is if it's a lower, like if the mesh is low res enough, you could actually use the mesh itself as the collision mesh on here. So I'll go ahead and I'll show you what we can do for that. So I ended up just collapsing all of these just so I could find collision. And you could always type stuff in here, and you could type in collision to find that. But you can see this collision presets. We got this block all. If you didn't want any collision, you can set it to no collision. There's some other things that we can do. We can customize and say, hey, we only want this to collide with our pawn or things like that. So I think probably what you're going to do is you're either going to do blocking or you're going to turn it off. And then here's where you can do this collision complexity. And what we can do for this is if we say collision complexity and we say we use complex collision as simple, that will actually use the actual mesh for the collision for that. And you do have to be careful about the size of your mesh. It's going to be obviously more accurate, but it's also going to be pretty heavy as well. So I'll just leave it on that right there like that. If you notice any kind of performance stuff, you might want to take it off this, just say project default. And then I would probably go and do this auto convex collision, apply that right there like that. And you should be back to having your simple collision that's in there like that. This is definitely going to be the most cost-effective way to get this done. Okay, so there's the collision component of it. So I'm going to take one of the rocks that you see here. I'm just going to hold down Alt and duplicate it. Yeah, right there like that. Drag this up, and then in the details panel, you can see I want to simulate physics for this object that we see here on this. So if I want to come up here and I can actually simulate this, it will simulate. The problem is you can see it's falling back here in the back. I've got my sequence playing and everything else like that. We need to grab this mesh and we need to hit a key on that after it's simulated and kind of fallen. But in order for us to do that, I'm going to need to kill what I've got going on in the level blueprint. So I'm going to open that thing up. And if you remember what I got going on at the very beginning, I got my startup options, and then I'm telling it to play this sequence. So I'll go ahead and just get rid of that, hold down Alt, and then just break that connection. And I do believe that should be enough. Let's go ahead and simulate it now. And yeah, now we just go into regular simulation mode. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out a couple of these, hold down Alt, and maybe rotate them ever so slightly like this, just to get some variation and some difference. And maybe some are a little bit closer to the ground, maybe some up a little bit higher. And I'm just going to hold down Shift and select these, hold down Alt, rotate them, maybe rotate them up like this. And then now let's just have them selected. And let's just see what happens at this point. If we have them pre-selected, if the manipulator gets in your way, you can hold down Q and get rid of that. So we've got them pre-selected. We hit not play. Let's go tap F to fly back over there. Sorry about that. Not play. Let's simulate. they fall down and they're already pre-selected, and we should be able to hit K. And what that does is it saves the state for those actors that are selected. Now we can stop simulating and you can see that they actually stay in that location. Now maybe you don't like exactly where this fell. Maybe you want to move these over a little bit. You at least have the options. If I tap W and kind of move this thing over, I'll push this thing over here. And then if you're happy with where they sit, it's probably, let's see if this is the cluster that I had right here like that. You want to turn off the simulate physics at that point. You could leave it on. It's going to do something like this where you see this rock over here and it's still going to continue to fall. I'll do that every single time. But if you're happy with the position of where that thing sits, just turn off the simulate physics and then you're good to go. In this section, we're going to take a look at how we can make two different blueprints. The first blueprint is we're going to get next to a door and we're going to cause an overlap event, and that will cause the door to go up. And whenever we go out of this collision box that we make, it will actually make the door go close, and you can see it's going to play a sound for us. And then after we learn that one, we're going to need to do something that's a little bit more difficult. We'll be able to get up close to the door, and when we hit the O key or any key that you choose, it will actually open the door, and if we move back away from it, it'll be able to close it. If you do notice that the play rate of the door opening goes faster, and then when we move away from this, it goes a little bit slower, we're going to take a look at how we can add those components too. So just to show you, I've got a new door over here, and it doesn't have any events on it at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit escape and come out of here. I'm going to hit F11 so we can actually see the editor and all the components for that. So let's go ahead and select this. I've already made this into a blueprint. You've already taken a look at that before. So there's nothing new about that. I'll double click this and open it up. And let me bring this into view so we can take a look at it here. If we go to the viewport area, we're used to looking at this already. We can see all the parts and pieces. We've got all the different components that we have off to the left. If you do need to change the light, we can tap L, click and hold L, and then click and drag this around, and we can drag the light around on here. All right. So I do have the door, and if I get this selected, you can see it's under the shared root. Let's go and pull this down here. So all I did was make another scene root. So if you go to add for your components and you type in scene like this, you can go find a scene utility node, and I just changed the name of that to door root. This allows me to put anything I want in this door root. I can grab it and I can move this thing up and down. You can see it's actually showing in the viewport over here what's happening whenever we take this door root and we move this up and down. So that's actually the component that we're going to be using, and we're going to be taking that component and we'll move it up and down. But we need to do that over time with an animation node. All right. So the other part is I want to show you these nodes. This is the viewport. You're used to taking a look at that. We've got the construction script, and that's anything that we need to build or set options at the very beginning before we actually play in the game. So if you want to do some special sauce inside of here to change some values and things like that, and have that show up in the world, you might want to do that through the construction script. Everything that happens over here in the event graph, this all happens whenever we go to play the game. And there's a couple different ways of being able to enable things. Usually there's going to be a node in here. I think I deleted it out, but there's a event begin play, and that usually just kicks things off with stuff. We're going to make a custom thing that's actually driving everything. We're actually going to use collision to say, hey, whenever the player enters in a certain area that's close to this, we want something to happen. So what are we going to add? We're going to go this plus button under components and do collision. So we'll start typing in collision, and there's a couple different collision types that you can use. There's a box, there's a capsule, and there's a sphere collider. Let's go ahead and just click on this box collision, and you can see it's going to give us this new box here. I don't want that to be parented to this door root because we're actually going to be moving this thing around. I do want this thing to just be parented to the root. I've got so many objects within here. I just need to scroll up until I can get this closer to this shared root, and I'll just put that on there and I'll just tell it to attach. So now that should give us the box collision. I'm going to just click on the name of this. Actually, I'll just right click and say rename or F2, and let me just call this box 1 like that. Okay, so that's our box collision. Now, if we hit the space bar, we can actually cycle between translation, rotation, and scale. So I'm going to scale this thing up, make sure it covers the width of the door like that. And for depth, this is how far we need to step into this before it's recognized. I do want it to cover the full length of the door, so I'll just tap the space bar, move this up. We can actually see that in here. If we tab G, we get to hide all the game stuff. But if we tab G again, then we can see these game components, and you can see in the world the character would need to step within there. So if you want to make sure that this thing really catches the character, we could get it to be right about here, and maybe we want to scale this thing out even more. Okay. So again, this is when as soon as the player enters into that, it's going to invoke something, and as soon as we step out of it, it's going to as well. So it's really up to you how large you make this collision volume of yours. Okay, so that's the first part. If we went in here and we compile and we save, that's not really going to do anything for us. We just made the collider, but it's not really going to do it or drive any type of events, right? So really, we need to go to this event graph. And what we're going to do with this box one, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the details panel right here, you can see that there is an on component begin overlap. And then that's the thing when we walk into that, we can drive some events. So we can click plus here. That's one way that we can do it. The other way that we can do this is if we right click and we start to look for different nodes, you can see at the very top here, there's add event for box one. Open that up. And under collision, there's add on component begin overlap. So go ahead and click that, and you can see it's going to build this node for us, right? And so this is going to tell it whenever something overlaps with this, we're going to fire off and we're going to do some type of thing with that, okay? So what I want to do is I want to actually do something over time. I want to animate something over time. And they've got a very specific node in here that you can use for that. So we can right click in here and we can type in timeline like this. You might have to scroll down to the very bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a timeline. Okay. So it should give us a name. I'm going to go ahead and call this door open and maybe do underscore and just do TL like that, just so I know that's a timeline. Or you could put TL at the beginning of it. That might actually, I think when Unreal does their naming conventions, a lot of times I'll see it at the very beginning. So we can just do timeline door open like that. The name is whatever you want to make it. Watch this. If we double click this, it's going to take us into this very special area where we can say, what do we want to do with this thing? Right now, the length of the animation is set to 5 seconds. I'm going to put that to 1 second right there like that. It's already set. Actually, loop was not on. So I'm going to make sure loop is off for this. So that's off. If you wanted to click there, loop is actually on. Because we step into this, we want this to play once, and then we step out, we want it to play once. We don't want it to keep looping over and over again. So under track, this is what we can do for the data that we're trying to drive. If we do a float track, that's going to be some value that we can do. It's some positive or negative, and you can get decimal points for that. So that's one single value. That's really all we need. If we needed to drive something like red, green, and blue, or X, Y, and Z, we could do a vector track, and that's going to give us 3 different values. And then we also have an event track and also a color track. So let's just do this float track. And as soon as we do that, it gives us this new track that we can call. And I'll just call this track under T underscore door open like that. Okay. So that's our track that we've got. To add a keyframe, we can just go and right click on here and say add keyframe right here. I do want to select this and make sure the values are whole values. So this time, I'm going to put this at 0. And then the value of this should be 0 as well. And then I want to animate this over just 1 second. So I'm going to right click here, so add a key, put the time to 1. And then the value, I'm just going to put to 1. So if we want to see this all the way expanded this way and this way, we can click these 2 buttons. And so this is just going to give us a linear time, and it's going to just change the value from 0 to 1 over 1 second like that, right? And you can see it's a straight line. That means it's linear. If we click on this and right click, we can change the ease in and out, ease out of this. So if we do this and put this on auto, you can see how it flattens here. So it's just going to start off really slow, pick up speed, and then once it gets to the end of the animation, it's just going to slow down for that. You can actually click on these. You could play around with the handles by just clicking and dragging. So it's possible that you could play around with that a little bit. I actually just want that to be flattened, so I can just fix that up again. And then that's really all we need for this curve. Okay, so I'm going to hop back over to the event graph, and you can see it gives us this new channel that we're going to kick out, and it's this T door open. So I can actually plug this into the play. And right now, when anything overlaps this, it's going to play it. I'm going to show you how we can limit that and make sure that it's only the player character that's doing it. But for right now, I just want to do this pretty quickly, right? So the one thing that I want it to lift up this door root that we have right here. So I'm just going to click and drag this out, this node. This is the thing that I want it to affect. And what I want it to do is I'm going to use this node called set relative location. So I'm just going to type in set, and then I'm going to type in location and see if I could find set relative location that we see here, like that. Okay. So let's just go ahead and plug this in. We're going to update it. All right. And what it's looking for location is this transform for it. We only have one single float value, so in order to plug that in, if we plugged it directly in, it would convert it over for us. But what that would do is actually drive three different values. It's converting this one value and then turning it into three. It's not what we want. We want to do this. We're going to right click over this and say split struct pin. And you can see now it's going to open this thing up, and it's going to make an X, Y, and Z for us. So in Unreal, going up into the world is Z up world. So I'm going to take this T door open, and I'm going to put it on new location and put it on Z like this. Okay. All right. I'm going ahead and compile this. I'm going to save it. And then let's just go ahead and actually play and see what happens. Now it's only going to raise it up one. It's barely going to be even noticeable to us. Okay. So what can we do with this? We could drag this out. Let's type in multiply. And we can multiply this by some other number. And let's change this to something like 200. Let's just see what happens at this point. Okay, compile it and save. I'll play it. And let's move over here, go into the collision volume and take a look. It just played for us and it moved it up 200 units. Okay, so that's working pretty good. But you know what? I want to make some control where I could actually just go in here into the editor, and every time I pull out this blueprint, I want to be able to dynamically change the value. And let's say this door only wanted to raise up 200 units, and another one I wanted to raise up 100, and another one's 300. I want to do that per object. All right, so I'm going to show you a little setup that we can do for setting this up. So I'm going to take this multiply node, just get rid of it, and let's just try this. If we type in lerp, this did trip me up because it's a linear interpolation node, but in order to find it, you need to type in lerp. This will give us the linear interpolation node. This gives us two different values that we can work with. And then we've got an A slot and a B slot. So if you think of them as layers, and A sitting over the top of B, we've got this alpha, and that lets us blend between these two. So what we're going to do is take that animation data that we have, that's 0 to 1, and we're going to use that for our alpha, and that's going to blend it over time. Now we're going to plug this into this new location right here. But right now we just got a value of 0 and 0, so that's not going to do anything, right? So that's we need something else here. Now we can hard code this, and we could put something in here. And I know a value of 285 will actually work for me. And so I'm going to go ahead and compile that, save it. Let's just play this real quick and see if this is doing what I'm expecting. Yeah, so it's going to raise it up, and it's going to give me what I want here. So this is good. The only thing is, I was telling you I would like a way for me to be able to place these in the world and then dynamically change these values that are on here. So what I'm going to do is just right click on here and say promote to parameter. It already starts to give you a name, and I'll call this door rest. location, like that, okay? And at any point, if you want to change the name of these things, you can go back in and you could update that and change the name of this. If these wires start to get in the way, you can double click them and you can just drag this around like this. And maybe we need to give ourselves just a little bit more space or a little more breathing room. So that might help on there. So this is the door, the resting location, which is just going to be a value of 0. I'm going to show you this in just a second where we'll compile. But we're going to make another node, and let's just right click and say promote to variable. And then let's call this one, let's call this door raise location. And again, if you spell this wrong or anything else like that, don't worry. You can always go back and you can change the values of this. So right now, it doesn't look like there's anything on this. This did trip me up a bit when I was first starting to do the blueprint thing. You had to compile. Once you compile, it opens these up. And then now we can put this, and I've got this value of 285, right? I could change this to whatever I want. And so let's just even put like 280 or something like that, okay? Now, this will work. We can play in here. It should raise this thing up for us just like we did before. Okay. The problem is, I was telling you I'd like to be able to change the values of this. And if I go over here and I'm looking for something in the details panel, I don't really see anything there. So what can we do about that? Let's just take these nodes, and you can see that there's this instance editable check flag. If we turn that on for this, and turn it on for this one here, and then we compile, then we save. Take a look over here, what's going to show up for us. We've got this new door rest location, and we got a door raise location, right? So I'm just going to put this at 500 just to show you what's going to happen. Let's just go over here, and you can see without even going into the blueprint, now it's changed that value for us. So again, I could drag out a copy of this. I'm just going to hold down Alt. I'll drag out a copy of this just to show you the power of this, right? So let's put this back to our 285. This one will remain at 500. Let's just go ahead and play this. And you can see whenever I go to, this one here, it's going to raise it up. And then this one should be raising up to our 500, right? So that makes it really nice for us to dynamically change some of the values on there. I'll go ahead and get rid of that one here like that. And so that's the basis of the door opening, right? And now we would like to try to make it close. Okay, so we've already got this on component begin overlap. We already know that we used our box before. Let's just right click on here and say add event for box 1. Go to collision, and then this time, instead of overlap, begin overlap, let's do an end overlap. And it will give us this node here that you see. And all we need to do for this one is, all we got to do is take this and drag this and plug this into reverse, like this. Go ahead and compile it. We can save it. And let's go ahead and play this and take a look at what's happening with this. At this point, you can see now we can just go in and out of these, and as soon as I walk out, it's not going to finish and playing. It will go ahead and reverse for us. Let's see real quick what happens if we do reverse from end. I'm going to compile that, save it. Go ahead and do this, and then go here. It'll raise all the way up. Let's see what happens if I go out of that thing all the way. So it does do a little bit of a pop. Because it's going all the way to the very end, we would probably need to do some kind of, after this thing is finished, then we could tell it to reverse. So we would have to build a little bit of logic on there. So I actually did like that functionality of we just step out and it automatically goes to the next thing and then goes ahead and closes for us. Okay, so that's the base bare bones functionality of this. I would like to show you how we can add sound for this. So what if we wanted to play a sound effect at that point whenever we open and close these things? So I'm going to give a little bit of space here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a sound as soon as we do the overlap for us. And so we can drag out and let's to play sound. And we can do play sound 2D. That will just play sound for us. But if we wanted to do play sound at a location, that gets a little more complex, and we'd have to get the location of the door or whatever it is that we're working with. So I'm just gonna keep things simple, and I'll do a play sound 2D like this. Now I did add a sound for myself within here. So if I go to sounds, I found this sound of a stone kind of sliding on top of stone, and you just need to bring that in as a wave file. You need to find a wave file, and you can drag these in. If I have it selected, I can go ahead and I can plug it in right here for this, and I'll go ahead and compile, save. And then I wanted it to play that sound as well, so I'm going to copy and paste that, and I'm going to have it trigger here on reverse like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and compile and save, and let's just try that out and see if it's making the sound for us. There you go. Okay, so everything's working. And the other cool thing is you can see if we got this blueprint open and we actually have this selected, we can, if we had multiple of these, we can have the one selected that we want to test out and see what's going on with everything. And then whenever we play, you can actually see the blueprint in action and things getting fired off for that. So that's a cool way of looking at things. So one of the problems though is that if I just spam this going back and forth, and this sound effect is not too bad, but there are some sound effects where it just continually just builds on itself over and over and over again. So that's kind of problematic. Within the blueprint system, they do have a method for the sound where there's a node called a do once node, and that will ensure that that sound only plays one time. So I could show you that node. I'm going to show you also some problems with that node for us. So we're going to do a do once like this. And you can see that we can drag through on here. It is possible that you can reset this thing, and we'll use that to our advantage in just a little bit. But if we do this, I'm going to copy and paste this over here like that, and then we'll do the reverse. Okay, compile this, let's save it, and let's play it. So it's going to play once here and here. The problem is it's actually playing the sound, and it's not letting this go through. And the order of this does matter, so let's hold on Alt, break this here, we'll break this here, like this, holding down Alt and just breaking this. So I need this do once at the beginning here. I think you can already see that there's going to be a problem with this. It might solve this sound thing that's going on, and they're not going to overlap each other. But let's update this and compile. Let's play it. So it will do the sound effect once here for closing, but then we've just caused this to where the functionality's gone, right? Because you can see how that do once node is hitting, and it's basically said, hey, I've done this once, just like you asked me to, but you didn't give me any kind of information to do anything to reset me. All right, to solve this problem, what I'm going to show you next is how to do a custom event. These are pretty cool. So we can right click on here and say custom event like this, and we can add a custom event. So we can make our own event happen. And I'm going to call this one play sound effects like that. Okay. All right. So this will fire something off. And now we need some way of calling this thing or sending something to this. What's nice about this is you saw we just called this play sound effects. So we can just search for that same thing that we just typed, play sound effects like that. And then we can do this call function play sound effects. And you can see now we've got a node type that will fire off and then fire off something like we can send it through this change, right? And it'll fire off. So now we can do this here, and let's go ahead and copy and paste. And so now every time we want to play a sound effect, this is a nice little node, and we can do a whole lot down here. It's almost like making a new little tiny blueprint or something, right? So we want to do this do once node, right? Um, and we want to make sure that this is only going to play the sound effect once. So something different that I had to do. So you saw I deleted everything through there, and we had this play sound, play 2D sound, and I was telling you about play a sound at location, and that one was a little bit more difficult. Well, we are going to have to use that because I'm going to show you this bind event to audio finished, and that needs some type of target. And there's an easy way of getting a target. So I know that sounds maybe confusing, but let's just take a look at this, right? So what we're going to do now at this time is after this do once node goes, we're going to spawn sound at location like this. Okay, this is going to give us this whole new node that we have. And what is going to be spawned is our sound that we have. So let's just click that and go ahead and plug it in. So it's going to play the sound for us. And you can see it's got a location now at this point. So it's up to you what you want to plug in for there, for that area. We could use the big door. We could use a box. There's a whole lot that we could use. We could even use the shared root. So there's different things that you could plug into this location. But what I'm actually going to do is use, I think I'll do, actually I will do the shared root. So let's do this shared root. So to get the world location, I'm just going to take shared location, drag off of that, and let's put this on the context sensitive. And let's say get world location. So we can get the world location, and it's going to ask you for all these different things you want to get the shared location for. And we've got a bunch of different things on here. I'm just looking for that shared root. Unfortunately, it does something where it adds its own new connection to the node. That's fine. So let me just push this over here. We can plug this in, and then now it's going to get the the location of this door wherever it sits, and it's actually going to play the sound from that location. So again, it's a little bit more complicated to get that, but not too hard to find. Okay. So the next part is we want to find out if the audio has been finished, and once the audio has been finished, then we want to go ahead and say, yeah, we're going to allow this thing to reset, and so that reset allows it to play again. So we're going to do this thing where we're going to call this bind event like this to audio finish. So I'm going to do audio finished. Man, I cannot type. There we go. Bind event to audio finished, right? So sometimes I was having trouble finding that. If you do, you can click on this context sensitive. It's going to open up a whole bunch more options, but let's just go ahead and click this bind to audio finished, just like that. And you can see the target. We can take this return value and plug it directly in there, and then that will work fine for us at that point. All right, now that we have this set up, let's just go ahead and drag out from this event, and then we can say add event, or we'll do a custom event. And I'm just going to call this on audio finished. I'm going to do underscore event. So it's up to you what you want to call this thing. But when we do this, we can tell this now we want this to reset. So I can double click on this and just put this over here just to get this cleaned up just a little bit, just like that. And then this, after it's done playing the sound, it should reset this thing for us and then play it. So I'm just going to go and push this over here, and I'm going to put this on reverse, just like that, and compile it, and then save it, and then let's play it. And let's go over here like this. I did see that there's the possibility of this could still play some sound for us. So I also wanted to reset and make sure that when we exit out, it's going to ensure that it plays a sound. So I could add another custom event. And I'm going to do this add custom event, and I'll call this one exit the overlap. Like this right here. Okay. And I'll plug this into a reset as well. So in order to get that, I'm going to type in the same thing. exit the overlap, just like that. And now what I can do is say, as soon as we exit the overlap, that will fire this off, and it'll make sure that it resets for that as well. And now we've got this self-contained thing. So I could take all this and then tap C for comment, and I'm just going to call this do once for sound, just like that. Okay, and so we can keep that nice and clean. All right. So this should give us all the parts and pieces that we need for this. I did promise, though, that we would add one more control to this. And that is if we are playing this and we want to make sure that whenever we enter this thing and it starts to lift up, we can have some play rate for that or some animation speed for that. And then when it goes down, we can do something a little bit slower. So something that's kind of interesting before we play this timeline is that we can actually affect the time of that. So if we open this up over here for the components, and I need to raise this up so I can see all the different pieces here. If we scroll down and find this TL door open, the node for this, let's click it and drag it in here just like this, and we'll say a get. So I'm getting that node, and then if I use a node called set play rate, I can do this. We can interrupt this here. Let me hook this up right there to play. And then I could say a new play rate. And then I'm going to put this one to 2. So maybe it opens faster, right? And I can do the same thing down here as well. So I'm going to just copy this, paste it, and do this for the reverse. Let me put this right under there so I can keep this a little bit more organized like this. And then maybe on this one I do 0.75, so it goes a whole lot slower, just like that. Okay, so I'm just trying to get this to be just a little bit more organized, okay, when we look at it. So let's compile, save, and let's just play that. You can see that thing goes super fast, and now it's going a whole lot slower, right? And so really, I want this thing to be like 0.35, something like that. And maybe we just put this at 1. I thought the speed was just very fast. So not too bad on there, whole lot slower coming down. Pretty fast going up like that. And we should be controlling our sound, and everything should be working for us on there, okay? All right, so I know this is getting a little bit more complicated. This is the simple door, the simpler version of it. We're going to go add some complexity to this, and we're going to make it to where we actually have to walk up to it, and we have to actually make sure that it's the player doing this, and we can make sure that that's happening. Let me explain this to you, okay? Because right now, we don't really have a way to limit this. I believe anything can open the door on here. So if we go to the engine and go to content, I'm just going to double click on there and then search for sphere and find an arcade sphere, an editor sphere, what doesn't really matter. So let's do this arcade sphere. And let's push this up. I'm going to make it smaller, just like this. And let's push it right here outside of the collision so we know it's not colliding with it. I'll go ahead and hit end, and it should put it on the floor for us, just like that. Let me pull this down here just right now so we can see what's going on with this. And I'm going to tell this to simulate physics. So when we go in here, we should be able to push the sphere around. And then if we go to collision, we want to simulate generate hit events, and we'll turn that on. So that should let collision, these collision boxes be aware of this thing. So let's hit play. Let's see what happens. So I can just push the thing into it and nothing's going to happen. Okay, so the reason nothing happened, I clicked the wrong thing. So it's not simulate generates hit events, it's generate overlap events. Okay, let's try it again. One more time. So let's hit play. Let's go over here to the sphere. Just knock the sphere in there. And you can see the sphere causes this thing to to work like that. Okay, let's do that one more time. So who knows? Maybe you actually want to turn that into a game, and maybe that's something that you do want. That you can do something interesting with that for sure. The issue is, what if I don't want that to happen? What if I only want to make sure that the player is the only thing that causes these overlap events? Well, we can use something to our advantage called a cast node. And if we cast to something, it's going to do a check for us. And it's going to check and see if the thing that we're saying we want to cast to is actually that thing or not. And it will either cast to it or it will fail. Okay. So we are currently using the blueprint, the third person character. So if we drag off of here and we do cast into, say, BP underscore third person character, we're going to cast to that. And then we need to take this object that it's asking for, and we need to take this other actor and drag it into here. So casting is a whole thing that is pretty complex for you to understand, but and I'm always confused as to what needs to be put into this object area. It's very simple whenever you're doing overlaps because it knows what's overlapping with it, and it's telling you that's what this object is. But that'll work for now. This should work for any overlap event that we're doing because it actually knows what it's interacting with. And so what we're looking for is if it's the third person character, yeah, great. It's gonna make it through. If not, it's going to fail, and basically that stops this flow of information on there, right? We can do the same thing for the end overlap, so we can just copy and paste this cast node, put this down within through here, and then just plug that into here, just like we've got before. Okay. And so let's test this thing out. Let's see what happens. Let's compile this and save. Actually, I see it caused this to fail, and I forgot to plug in this other actor into the object. There we go. Okay, so everything should be good. Got angry with me. Let's go ahead and hit play, and let's see what happens now. Will the ball actually cause it to do anything? Nope, because it goes to cast, and it says, nope, you are not the player character that I'm looking for. You're not the third person character. Are you the third person character? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and let you go through for that. All right. So I know we're using that kind of like a gate to say what that thing is. We are limiting things by that. But you know what? Normally, what you would do with this after you've cast to it and you can find it on the third person character, we've looked at changing the movement system and everything else like that. As soon as we do that, we actually get access to all the data that exists within that third person character. So we can start changing different variables and things like the max jump height and things that we did before with a button press. You could actually change that with some blueprint code. So it's actually very, very cool. And it's a very powerful system. It just goes way beyond what I feel comfortable showing and trying to explain, other than we can use this as some kind of check system. Okay. After that, if you want to take a look at this thing here, I will make this full screen. And then this is basically our blueprint code that we've generated for ourselves that will give us everything for that simple door. And we've made it a little more complex. Depending on how complex you want to make this, it's up to you what you want to add for this node system. But this will be the basis for what we do for the more complex door. The only thing that we're going to do at that point, we're going to do a check and make sure that we're in the collision box, which that should be very easy. Then we're going to set up some logic to say, okay, if we're in there, and then we also hit this button press, okay, well, then let's go ahead and open and close the door. Okay. All right. So let's cut the video for just a second, and I'll be right back, and we'll show you that part. All right, here we are ready to make the more complex door, and we're going to make it to where the player character can walk up to it. We're going to see some text that will display and say, hey, hit this certain button. When you do, it'll open the door. So we're going to build off the previous blueprint door that we had before. So I'm just going to right click on this and say duplicate, just like that. And I've already got a name for this where it was Castle Door version A. And I'm just going to call this version B, like this. Okay, so I should have a brand new blueprint to work with. Again, it's going to look just like what we had before. So nothing special with that. And then again, what we're going to do is we're going to make it to where when we walk up to the door, we are going to show some text. So in order to do that, let's actually add some text to this. So let's click this add up here, sorry. And we'll do text. We're going to do a text renderer like this. And we will call this click to open. And I'm going to do underscore one of one because there could be two versions of this just to make sure that they're shown on both sides of this thing. Okay, so I'm just going to click and drag this out into here. So we've already got the text on here like this. I need to rotate it like this. I'll do a rotate it 180 just like that. And with this text, we can do horizontal alignment left. Let's just do the center. And here's the actual text. And I'm going to do click O key to open like that. Okay. So here's our text that we've got. I'm just going to raise it up right in through here. The cool thing is we should be able to see this pop into the world right here like that. Problem is, I see. I haven't dragged one of these copies into the world yet. I'm going to turn on my grid snapping and we'll have rotational snap on there too. So version B, we're just going to get this lined right about there, just like that. And we're good to go. So now we can see, click the O key to open. And we've got version 1. And I'm just going to hit Control D to do that, and we got a version 2 like this. I'll select this one, and I need to rotate it back to our 0 like this, and let's just push this out to about here. Let's see how far this one's sticking out. This one is sticking out like 200. Let's do 245. Like that. That's actually the height. And then this is negative 90. Oops, negative 90. And then I'll put this one here to 245. And let's just put this one at 90 like that. So it should be nice and even on the front and the back. So we can compile that, save it. So that's cool. It's gonna remain there. If we go in there and take a look, it will show this for us, no problem. But what I would like to do is I would rather this be not visible, and then whenever we hit the collision volume, then it actually becomes visible. So let's actually select both of these. You can see there's under rendering over here, there's a visible. Let's just turn that off. So we're turning out the visibility of this thing. We'll do the same thing for this one. So they should be hidden at that point. And what we want to do is go back to our event graph. And then when we do this begin overlap, we can, after our cast, let's just move this stuff forward like this. We can actually do a toggle visibility on this thing. So if we just take the, click the door to open one like this, and then this one here, we can drag this out, and we will use a node, just drag off and say toggle visibility for rendering. Okay. And we should be able to plug in multiple things into that at one time, just like that. So let's just drag this over here like that. Okay. And let's do this. Let's hit compile. Let's save it. And let's go ahead and play it and just test this thing out and see if that works for us. Okay. So the visibility is working, right? So that turned on. So let's do the same thing for whenever we go out. So we're going to copy, we're going to paste this right here like that. Okay. Compile it and we'll save it. Let's try it again. So it turns on, we step out, turns off. It should keep doing that for us. Okay, so everything's great on there. The next thing that we probably want to work on is this whole button press, right? Right now it's automatically playing for us. And what we need to do is we actually need to tell it to branch on there, right? So what we can do is we can do a branch. Let's click here and type in branch like this. And you can see we get that branch node. And then we could tell it to say, if if something's true, like some kind of condition or a node that we set, we can tell it to actually play something for us. All right. So right now we need to say if we're in this thing already, we would already know that we're the player character. We would already see this visibility of this thing, and then we need to determine, well, are we going to play this thing or not? You know, and if the condition is something like, have we hit the O key? That's something that we need to know. So remember that we can make custom variables within here. So let's just make a variable, and I want to call this button has been pressed, like that. Okay. And with these nodes, this is a Boolean value, and it should just create that automatically for you. If we drag it out here, we can either get a value or we can set a value, right? So if we get the value of something like this, we can plug this in here, but we haven't really like found any information just yet. But we can find out about this condition. We can also drag it out and we can do a set for this. Okay. So what we could do with this, we could say this. We could look for an input. So we're going to go open up to the input area in here. And I want a key event, or a keyboard event. What I want is a keyboard event. So let's go in here and let's find and scroll down and find the O key within here. Right there, like that. Okay. So as soon as I take the O key and I press this thing, I'm going to say, hey, has the button been pressed? And I'll say yes for that. Okay. So we're setting that value. The O key being pressed will actually turn this thing on and say, yeah, that's true. Let's make, I just compiled and I saved that. But let's go and take a look and see what is the default value of this. The default value is not checked, so that means it's false. Okay. So what is happening right now with the logic is this. It's our character comes in here, he steps in the volume, the visibility of the text comes on and lets us know, hey, do you want to hit the O key? And if you just stand there and do nothing, then it's going to be false. So it's not going to play that animation anymore for us, right? But if they hit the O key and it's been pressed, and then if that now becomes true, then we can go ahead and we can play this. So I'm going to compile this and I'm going to save it, and let's go ahead and play it. I already know that there's going to be an issue with this, but we're just going to do it anyway. So we go within here, we hit the O key, and nothing's going to happen. We actually need to make sure that we have inputs enabled on this blueprint so it can listen for button presses and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable inputs on this. So we're going to do this. And by already building this, I already know that whenever I go into the overlap of this, I need to enable inputs. And when I go out of it, I need to disable inputs. That took a little bit of trial and error for that. So what I can do is we can make our own custom event. like we've been doing. So we'll add a custom event and we'll call this enable inputs like that. And that's going to enable the inputs. We're gonna work on that in a bit. So let's type that in. Enable inputs right here. Nope. Let's type it again. Enable inputs for our call function that we've got. Okay, so when we go into this thing, it's going to enable the inputs for us. And then whenever we come out, we need a disable inputs. So let's do custom event again. Add custom event. We'll call this disable inputs. Like this. Let's put this here. Okay. So let's find that again. Disable inputs. Right there. Call function. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now we got everything set up to enable the inputs and disable it through a custom calling system, right? And now what we're going to do is drag off, and we're actually going to really enable inputs. So here's input, enable inputs right there like that. And then we're going to disable inputs right there like that. Okay. Now we do need to know that the target for this, or the player controller, sorry, is this. We need to get the player controller. So let's get player controller. So that's the actual controller for the input for the player. Let's copy and paste that right here and do that here. Okay. And I'm just going to push this out to the side, tap C, and I'm going to call this enable disable inputs like that. Okay. So we know that those custom events work on there like that. Okay. So we press the O key and we do that. And then basically whenever we exit out of here, it's going to disable the inputs. So let's compile this. Let's save it. And then let's see what happens here on there. Okay. Let's go ahead and play this and then move over and then stand here and we'll tap the O key. Okay, so that did not work for me. What I can do is change around the logic just a little bit. I'm going to break this part right here, and I'm going to change this right here. Bring this button press right in this area, and then plug it into this branch at that point, okay? So now at this point, we have to have the player character enter this trigger box that we have, and we check for the player, just like we've been doing before. And as soon as we do that, we enable inputs, and enable inputs will only be here whenever we are in this vicinity, right? So we've turned on the visibility of the text and everything else, and now we're looking for that button press, and we can do this here. Well, why it was failing before was it was doing all this, and then this button press was just off to the side. So blueprints just fire off really quickly. So as soon as I overlap this thing, it just tried to go through the entire chain, and it checked and said, hey, has the button been pressed? No, not yet. And it's not continuously just like listening for that to happen. But it will know that we're inside this thing, and then if I press the button, then it'll fire off the rest of this. So let's just go ahead and play this, and we can see what's going to happen now at this point with it. I got to go in there. It's going to enable the inputs. I hit the O key. If I step back out, if I tap the O key now, it's not going to do anything because I'm not within that range, right? So when I come here, tap the O key, and it should open and close for us at that point. Okay, so I just rearranged and then cleaned up the nodes just a little bit, just to try to make this read a little bit better. So again, we're just building upon what we did for the last door that we had, but we interrupted that. Still the same thing. We're going to check for the character. We're enabling the inputs Once we're in range for that, we toggle the visibility of the text. So we looked at that, how to turn that on and off. And then if we are in range and we have enabled inputs, if we tap O, it's going to execute this part of the code, which, does the animation and everything else like that. And then if we exit out of the trigger volume, then we can disable the inputs. We can no longer hit that O key and it won't cause anything to open up. We do toggle the visibility of those parts and pieces, and we still playing the sound effect the same we did before. This all works for this, do once for the sound. And we made these custom events that would enable and disable the inputs for us. So hopefully that is going to give you something to think about and something to play around with and take a look at how you can do some animation events. And just like I was saying with that sphere, if you wanted to open it up and you're trying to play some type of game or something like that, that might be an interesting thing for you to explore. So hopefully this gets you interested in trying to maybe build your own little system and maybe take the system that I showed you and tweaking it and making it something special for you. Okay, so that concludes the extras videos, and what we took a look at is how we could build these blades of grass, have them move around in the wind. First, we took a look at how we can build complexity with our modeling using some of the pattern tools that they have. How can we populate some of the world using the physics of Unreal and be able to place things in that way? And then the very last thing that we looked at is how we can actually open and close doors automatically or come up to a door, tap the O key, and have that work for us just like that. So I hope you enjoyed the material, and I hope you've learned some new stuff by following the content. And thanks for watching.